Hello and good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome to this monthly release webinar. And as always, we've delivered another seamless, easy update this morning so that when you logged on to Enterpryze, we had already implemented all the latest valuable updates for your system. So if it's your first time to be with us, you're very welcome on board. And this will all be about the latest release for Musashi. So let's dive right in and let's remind you about what it is that we've delivered for you today. And as I've said, you've logged on to the system this morning and all of these changes have been easily and simply implemented on your system without any downtime, interruptions, or otherwise. So let me just share my screen and remind you of what those latest releases are. So looking at the first big change that we've brought to you this month, and it's all around your customer services. It's all around being able to track and record the services that you provide to your customers utilizing our new service SLAs. So these are your service agreements that you have with your customers. So the idea here is that you can define those SLA agreements. So the hours under which that you've agreed to go back to your customers. So for example, that could be maybe different from region to region or country to country, depending on where you have those agreements set. So based on the hours that you've agreed, you can then assign that a particular agreement to a customer. And as you add and track your service calls, you can then have the expected closing dates automatically calculated for you against the service calls themselves. And of course, accountability then to track that and analyze the information as it comes through the service calls, but through the service grid itself, where you can create reports based on those KPIs and ensure that you're delivering the services that you require and all of and monitoring obviously the real-time response against those SLAs. So you can see there all the added benefits of bringing the SLA into action on your organization. So you get to define those customer-specific SLAs. You get to configure the detailed parameters that I've mentioned already. So they will be your service hours. So whether the agreement is Monday to Friday or 7 days a week, and the hours of agreement that you respond within that particular region, that time zone, coverage days, all for greater flexibility, obviously. Then you can easily assign those SLAs to your customer, monitor those in real time against the targets, and of course, report on those through the grids. So obviously at the end of this, we'll go through a live demonstration of how you can utilize that from today and set that up in your organization. So you can see here, just even on the customer screen itself, it's very simple. There is a new service tab where you'll be able to assign your SLA to your customer. So next up, we have all of the wonderful UI enhancements throughout the sales transactions. As you know, this year in particular, we've done an awful lot around the UI and obviously bringing that on and making that more user-friendly, but ultimately bringing you information faster, but in one place. So delivering information that you need to hand as you process a transaction. So we're listening to you at all times to find out what information is important to you, and then obviously trying to bring that into the grids through exposing some of the columns that you need to have on board, and also through the transaction screens themselves, trying to make that work better for you and easier insofar as information that you need to see to hand, like what you already have when it comes to the transaction lines, where you can drill in to see item code information, or for example, stock availability against the quantity. So to ensure that stock is available within the warehouse, either you're selling from or other warehouses, or perhaps if you're working within multiple companies and utilizing the intercompany, well, how do you see that information as well through the transaction screen? So just to remind you of what those enhancements are for this month in Musashi, we have the transactions grid. So within the transactions grid, what we've done is we've added the open quantity column, and we've added that into the item line details wise panel. And again, I'll show you that in the live demonstration. In the transaction screen itself, so even looking here at the sales order screen, we've added lots of new elements throughout the screen itself. And I've mentioned there already about being able to drill into your quantity. But not only that, now you'll be able to drill into your line total and see the gross profit wise panel. And that will just give you a breakdown of the gross profit that's been calculated at line level for that particular stock item. As you know, back a couple of months ago in a previous release, we gave that to you through the gross total at the bottom of the document for the overall document itself. If you wanted to see the gross profit at line level, you would have to expand the line when viewing the transaction. But now we're giving it to you directly from the line itself by simply just clicking on the line total. And you will see that again in the live demonstration where you'll have the purple click through on the line total to click in and see that. In addition to that, we've also added on some great new buttons. You could probably see here just on the print screen that we've got a columns button, an Excel button, and we've also got an edit button at line level. So this is currently when you view the transaction. So this is viewing a sales order here in this particular example. You will see these three new buttons. The columns button, as you would expect, when you click on that, you'll be able to select from the columns that you want to see at line level. This is an exchange for what we had before today, which was the expanded button. When you viewed a sales order or an invoice or a delivery or a credit note, for example, you had to click on the expand button just to see at line level gross profit that was allocated, maybe the base price, the gross price for that particular line. If the item was three-dimensional, you would also have to see the dimensions allocated to that particular line when you expanded it. Now what you can do utilizing the columns button is just simply click and drag those columns that you need to display at item level when you're viewing your transaction, because not all are related to everybody all at once. The Excel button will simply allow you to export the grid, and that is all the item line details. You can export those to an Excel spreadsheet, again, if you want to analyze those particularly further or just to have a record of what those lines are, but perhaps it's quite a lengthy sales order or quote that you can now export those lines to Excel. The edit button is simply just the same edit button that you have at the top of the screen beside where you have copy to sales delivery or copy to sales invoice. You now just have the edit button simply at line level, and it brings you into exactly the same overview to edit the overall document itself. In addition to that, we've also introduced pricing display and editing in the customer currency. And this is simply where you have, and this is a good example, where you have a customer in foreign currency. Let's say the foreign currency is GBP, but the document or price list currency is in euro. So where the price of the item is stored in euro, but the currency is foreign currency, you will now see both prices displayed, and you'll be able to edit that price at line level in either of those currencies. If the price list is held in the same currency as your customer, there'll be no change. You won't see any difference. So I'll explain that to you again during the demonstration, and you'll see how very simple that can be handled for your foreign currency customers. In addition to that, we have the item details wise panel. Again, just a bit of formatting there with commas and obviously decimal places. We've added the reference field to the document header on the update wise panel. So that's where you're updating a document directly from the grid. You'll see now that you can also update the reference field, and that's your sales and purchase transactions. We've also included the company name when generating customer statements. So rather than it just saying statement number 85, it'll say statement number 85. And if the company name is, for example, AA Ireland, which you'll see in my demonstration, that's what will now be captioned on the name when you export those or print those to PDF, for example. So lots around the sales UI. So we'll cover off all of that during the live demonstration and remind you exactly where you can utilize and find all of that information. And now I'd like to introduce you to some key elements that we've brought in to the items. Again, always looking to improve on managing your stock and obviously the data and making that data work better for you and making it more flexible so that you can report on it better, but ultimately that you can get the most out of the system. So in relation to our square units, so this is one of our dimensional item types that we allow for within the stock setup. So where you've defined an item as a square unit item, we now have the additional field for factor. And the purpose of the factor is to enable automatic quantity conversions. So a good example of that is if you want to convert it from units to square meters, and again, it's for more accurate inventory and reporting so that when you sell that stock, that the conversion to square meters happens then on the sales transactions itself. So the screen example I've given you there is actually directly from a line entry so that when you're inputting the stock item and you input the dimensions of that item, as you can see here, 2 by 2, and I have a factor there that it will actually divide that calculation by 2 to give me the actual quantity in square meters to sell then to the customer. Again, I'll show you that as we go through the live demonstration. What we've done here in relation to additional columns, so this was important, of course, at all times to add more columns of information to make it easier for you to analyze and report on information that's important to you. So we've added on the default supplier. So when you now click into the items grid, you will be able to go into Actions, Column Chooser, and click and drag the default supplier to the items grid to report on items that you specifically purchase from a specific supplier, for example. And of course, a lot of that's all relevant when you're utilizing any of the reordering or the MRP within the system that you understand who are the suppliers that you need to reach out to in order to purchase or reorder that stock. For the bill of materials, what we've done is, again, to make it easier to identify where the stock resides. So when you look at a parent item or a final product or a finished product or bill of material, you'll be able to go into the bill of materials tab, and for each of the components, you can now display, if they exist in a specific bin, you can display that bin number. Again, keeping you informed and giving you better visibility of where that stock resides. So again, simply on that bill of materials tab, you'll be able to click on the 3 dots or the elliptical menu as we call it, and just click on your column chooser and click and drag that bin into view directly on the bill of materials tab. And last but not least, we've introduced another great valuable functionality or feature, which is basically customer and supplier item codes. So this is where you can record all the customer catalog numbers. So these are catalog numbers that are specific to what you sell to your customer or purchase directly from your supplier. So you'll be able to add on specific product or company item codes for your customers and your suppliers. And these can all be done very simply through the reordering tab on your item master screen. For those customers out there who are SAP Business One, you're using BP catalog numbers already in SAP Business One, you will automatically be able to view the catalog numbers in Enterprise, but you can't edit them in Enterprise. You'll have to update and maintain those directly in SAP Business One. But for everybody else in Enterprise, you'll be able to add, view and edit those directly within Enterprise. So really it enables you to catalog and cross-reference everything across your trading partners. Now, what that means then for selling the product or for purchasing the product is you'll be able to display those codes on screen during a sales and purchase transaction. And if you wish to bring those obviously to a PDF level, do reach out to us in support and we can have a conversation with you around that if you want to then display those on any particular layouts that you're using in the system. So another great value add there all around items. And as always, there's so much more that we've delivered this month. You can now utilize deposits on purchase orders. This is something that's already in the system around sales orders where you can basically get paid in advance of delivery and invoicing. So you can bring a deposit and basically enable a deposit invoice to be paid in advance. You can utilize the same functionality now on the purchasing. With CRM, there's an option to auto close activities. So you get a message now that if you go into win, for example, a lead and update that particular lead, you will now get an option to auto close activities. So at user level, you can decide if you have maybe, for example, 10 open activities, you can automatically update those. And lots more, as you can see there, around the home screen, around UI improvements, all the click-throughs that we've done to improve those, and the same again around accounting. And again, we've got a couple of new defaults around settings as well. So I'll remind you again at the end just to where you can access all of this information, which of course is always on our help center, help.enterpryze.com. And in the latest news at the very, very top, you'll see the Musashi release. Have a look at that. In there, I've got a step-by-step tour guide of all of the changes that have been applied for this month. So take a look at the tour, ensure that you understand where they reside, where the changes reside, and the value that they're going to bring to you, of course, from this month. So do check those out. Okay, well, let's jump on into the live system and let me just show you what some of those latest releases look like. So let me just share my screen now with you. And let's just dive into the live system. So starting off with the SLAs. So where do we begin? So very simply, we start here in settings. So I'm just going to show you exactly what I've done so far. So into settings, into module settings, and under services here, what we've done is we've introduced a new panel to record your SLAs. So as you can see here, I've got a few select ones that I've already added to the system for different regions. And all you have to do in order to add an SLA to the system is simply click on the plus sign. Well, let me just make it easy for you. And I'm just going to open up an existing SLA just to show you what I've done. So this is one I've put in for Dublin, just to show you that. The hours of condition for this SLA agreement is 2 hours, so which means service agreement is need to get back to the customer within 2 hours. When I switch on the working hours, I can then extend that to say the time zone. I can extend that then to show the start and end days of the service day, and of course the days of the week, and so on, and I can save that. Then against the company itself, I'll just quickly go in here to show you what I've done here against one of my companies. So into this particular customer, and if I go then to the service tab, all I've done here is just selected that particular SLA. What I would say to you here is that if you're going to use the SLAs, make sure that the names mean something to your team. Obviously work out a process and a naming convention that's familiar to your team so that there's no confusion over what SLA they've picked against a particular customer. But again, I've no doubt that obviously when it comes to setting up any of this information, it's going to be somebody down to administration level or services levels that's going to be administering. But just make sure that it means something to you as well as you define it in the system. And then very simply, come in here to services. We come in here to our service call grid. You can see here, I've obviously got some service calls that are already within the system. So I'm going to show you here what happens when you go to set up a new service call for that particular customer. So let me pick up that customer. And if I come down here, you can see straight away, because I can see here the exact time, 3:18. When I look here at the expected close date, it has automatically added the 2 hours. So we've got 17:18. If for any reason I change that time and I say, actually, no, I'm not recording that till 15:30, it'll go on to 17:30. If I, for any reason, we know that the time was what, 9 to 6. If I, for example, change that to 1700, let's say it's later in the day when we're recording the call, just want to show you that. It, in fact, as you can see, has moved the expected closing time and day till tomorrow. Got to remember that the last hour of the day, so 6 o'clock this evening, and then the first hour of tomorrow morning, so that's the 2 hours. So that's a simple calculation, as you can see. It's automatically pushed out the expected closing date. So already we're tracking our SLAs and we're recording the information very, very easily against the service call. And this is the calculation at all times is based on the expected time or hours to close the actual call itself. So if I go back to the service calls, well, what if we exceed that? What if we don't get back to the customer in time? Well, this is where it comes into play here directly on the grid. How do we analyze this further and ensure you're within your SLA agreements? Well, very simply here on the elliptical menu, we can go then to column chooser. We can scroll on down. And as you can see here, we have a couple of new fields. So we've got the expected close date. Let's bring that into view. We also have an overdue field. Let me bring that into view as well. And let me bring in the SLA. So already we're tracking, we're analyzing, and already at a glance, just by looking at the grid itself, I can see the SLAs already defined against those specific customers. If it was different for different customers, I would see the different hours associated with them here as well. I can see whether or not a service call is also overdue based on the SLA, and I can see when the expected closing date was meant to happen. If I drill into the service call itself, just to show you that as well, that on the top of the screen, we also have that overdue button highlighted in red, so the user can clearly see that the SLA is overdue. What we will bring into place from next month under here, under user and queue, just want to highlight that for you there. It will display the SLA hours as well down here. So we will see the 2 hours displayed here as well against the service call. So you'll be able to see it from every view. So whether you're analysing it directly from the grid or analysing it directly here from the service call itself to take further action, that you can review those agreements and see if the team is keeping up with the agreements for those customers. And of course, as always, because this information is easily accessible on the grid itself, don't forget we have the filtered reports. Don't forget to come in here, create the reports that you need to track your KPIs and report on those as and when you need them, and save them, of course, for future generation. So that's your SLAs. So let's move on then to the sales transactions. Lots of wonderful changes here that we saw already on the presentation. So let me simply drill into a sales order for you. So for example, let me just go to one that's currently open. So when you view the sales order here on screen, what we can do here at line level, we can come down here. We can see all of the fields that you want to view at any one time. As I've mentioned, the expansion button is no longer, but that's okay. We have the columns button now where we can simply click and drag any of the required columns that you need to see at all times to have saved against your login. So just simply click and drag those to view so that you can see them at all times, including gross profit, project code, tax code, delivery date, and even the company item code that I mentioned as part of the item changes. So let me just bring that there to view. There's nothing in there for this one, but I will show you when we'll add one into the system. In addition to that, what we can do is we can export those lines to Excel, and of course we can click on edit here. And by clicking on edit here, it takes us directly into the document itself, the same as the top edit button does as well. And I want to show you that even here at line level, as we drill in, you can see there that we've put in some new icons just around the cost centers, the edit and the delete button. I mentioned about the gross profit as well, so that when you click on the line total, this now activates a WISE panel to show you the item gross profit at line level. So you can see all of the information based on, of course, the way you have defined it in your organization. So whether that's by, as you can see here, this is by moving average, but yours might be by actual cost, which is manual cost, or by a price list, or by cost price. So whatever way you've defined that against your organization, you'll now be able to see that against the item at line level. Okay, so let me just go back out of the sales order itself for 1 second. And again, just to remind you that you can access all of those WISE panels directly here from the line as you view the item details. And don't forget, you've plenty of others there around the unit price, around the quantity as well. So for example, where you want to see stock availability, they're all the WISE panels that are currently in place. So just to go back to the orders tab itself, what we've done there around the line details as well, what we've added in here around the line details is if there's any open quantity. So for example, where you've part delivered on a sales order, that you can see the open quantity still available against that sales order directly here from the line details. So again, accessing information faster by just simply clicking on the line details to access the WISE panel without actually having to drill directly into the sales order itself. So just to mention as well, obviously those new fields around around columns and around Excel, they will be coming into place in the next release when you go to add a transaction or edit an existing transaction, you will get access to those as well at that point in time. So what I'd now like to show you here is when we're adding a sales order for a customer, a foreign customer that has an item on the sales order with a foreign currency price list. So let me take this particular customer. This is a foreign customer in this particular database. So you can see here GBP. And I'm now just going to add an item, and I'm just going to grab this item here. So because this item has a price list in euro, you can see here when we pop up the line to show the quantity, it now displays two lines on the unit price. So we've got the price list price, which is €5, but we can also see the conversion on the GBP price. So now for your foreign customers, you can now come in here and amend the price. So if you know you want to give them a discount, or you just want to sell it to them for £5 as opposed to €5, and obviously let the conversion happen on the exchange rate automatically, I can simply just come in here and do that. And as you can see, when we click past the field, you can see there it'll recalculate the euro value based on the exchange rate on the document, nice and simply. So that's a great value add for your foreign customers where you have a difference in the price list on currency, different to the actual document currency itself. And as you can see there, unit price in euro, but the line total is the 5 GBP that we specified at the very outset. So lots of great value add on just even adding transactions, and of course on the grid itself. But even if I go back to the grid, mentioned one other thing as well, that when you're updating your transactions, when you click here now on the open transaction button here, you can also, if I just go back to that there again, and if we go into the transaction button here, you can update the reference number directly from the update order panel. And this applies, of course, to your purchase transactions. So let's take a look at what else we've updated just in relation to your items. So last but not least, so a couple of things in relation to the grid itself. So I've mentioned about the default supplier. So as you can see here, there's a default supplier for one of the product items. And again, if you can't see that currently on the grid, very simply go into Actions, go to Column Chooser, locate the default supplier, and simply, as we do with all of our fields here, click and drag that to the grid. And then of course it's there for analysis for going forward. Let's take a look at a bill of material item. So for example, if I drill into this particular bill of material item, and if we go to the bill of materials tab, what we've done here as well against the components, we've now displayed the bin number. So again, a great addition just to know where stock resides as you're finalizing finished products. Where do you need to allocate those when you're bringing them into stock to ensure they're going into the right bins? Where they do exist already within a warehouse and in a bin, you want to ensure that you're moving stock in and out correctly. Again, if you don't see where this field is on the grid here at the moment, simply click on the three dots here for the elliptical menu, column chooser, search for the field and click and drag it here to the bill of materials grid to save it then going forward. Okay, well, let's have a look at what we mentioned as well in relation to cataloging. So the customer product or the customer supplier actual product codes. So I'm just going to take away this at the moment, and I'm just going to go into one of my items here. And what I want to show you here against the reordering tab, this is where you can now catalog this particular stock item. So I can record all of the customers and suppliers and their specific item codes relating to this particular item. And the purpose of cataloging, of course, is always as cross-referencing when purchasing items within your supply chain. So obviously contacting suppliers that you know what those codes are if they've already been agreed. And of course, just making that easier to obviously see within the system. And as I said, you can also bring those in to display those on the relevant transactions. So here we have an example of two of them. One is against a customer and one is against a supplier. And very simply, just to add on a catalogue, you simply just click on the plus sign here, select your customer or supplier, type in the item code and save that. So now what I'd like to show you, if we now go back to sales, and if we could just go back to an order and just go to new sales order, let's just bring in that particular customer and that particular item, and I will show you then how that is actually displayed on screen. So let me just grab that item, and let me just grab that price and add the item on. Perfect. And when we come down here now, what we'll be able to do is display the catalog number. So if we just save that particular order, and if, for example, I want to now display that, like I said, when you go to add and edit from next month, you'll be able to see these additional columns. And very simply, all I have to do is go to columns, and we've already displayed it because I would have saved it on the previous screen. You can see there, we've got the company item code now displayed on the sales order, and the same would apply for your purchases as well. So another great way to catalogue the items against your customers and but particularly against your suppliers, to ensure that the right items are ordered at all times. So lots there to take in. As I've mentioned, I've updated the latest Help Center article at all times. Always check this out, help.enterpryze.com. And if you go to the latest news, and just to remind you of where that resides, so check that out here. Wait for that to load up on screen. Perfect. Okay, and then if we go into the latest news and update. Okay, super. Okay, so news and updates, and you can see there at the very top, it's always the latest article. Click into Musashi and you'll get access to all of these great releases, but click here into the demos and you'll get a step through and exactly how to utilize everything that I've just taken you through there, but also everything else that's available in the latest release. So plenty more to come on the roadmap. The roadmap map is actually up to date as well, which is enterpryze.com. Enterpryze.com, and if you go into resources and click on roadmap, you will find out what's due to come as well in November and December. Lots of new updates coming as always, and as always we'll have another monthly release before the end of November, so it's great to keep on top of what's coming through the system. Well, thank you all so very much for joining me today, and look forward to seeing you on the next release. And if not, I'd love you to join me tomorrow on the next term 2 of Enterpryze University, which kicks off at 9:30 in the morning. So if you haven't yet received an invite, do reach out to support and we can get you on board straight away, or do check it out here on our resources page under University to register for the latest. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you the next time. Take care.